Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Gershon with another BetterHealth webinar. I am absolutely thrilled to be with an amazing person, an incredible doctor who represents really the future of medicine in a company, Flatiron Health. I'm proud to be able to introduce you to Dr. Rebecca Miksad, who is the Senior Medical Director and Head of Strategic Affairs and the Research Unit at Flatiron Health. And she will tell you both a personal story about her journey from medicine to Flatiron Health, the motivations that she's had, the exciting experiences, and some of the things to look forward to in the future about how the work that Flatiron is doing is addressing real world problems for patients and what this may mean for you as a patient, and certainly what it means for historically underserved populations in healthcare. And she will talk to you about how science, medicine, technology is interacting with human needs like never before. And I'm excited about this conversation because it's squarely in line with the ethos of Endeavor and BetterHealth. We've always felt and we always support leadership, and Flatiron and Dr. Miksad are squarely in the center of the leadership and the reshaping of healthcare for the future. So first, I want to thank everyone for their incredible support over the past several weeks. We've really had an incredible outpouring of quite a number of emails, texts, interactions from large companies, from small companies, from investors, from researchers, from physicians, from patients. And we encourage you now to sign on and let us know where you're signing in from. And please feel free to interact throughout the webinar today. If we don't get to all of your questions today, we will respond over the next week. We also want to frame a little bit about how the webinars are set up. So we will have one episode per month of a large unicorn like Flatiron. We will have an episode where we highlight an emerging company, an exciting early stage company that's looking for collaboration with very large companies. We will have one company that's focused in on the issues surrounding DEI. We will have one general conversation, which is a macro event with leaders who are either investors or in biopharma or in medical devices, in AI, talking about what they see happening in the years to come and what the impact of that will be for you as patients. So first, I want to introduce and let Dr. Miksad talk to you about herself. I know that you will be enthralled with her story, which is personal as well as scientific. So, Dr. Miksad, welcome to BetterHealth. I know we've had many conversations about the incredible things that you personally are doing and Flatiron stands for and the projects that you're running. Please tell us a bit about yourself, how you got to Flatiron, and then we can move into some of the amazing things that you're working on that are reshaping healthcare.
Great. Thank you so much, Martin. And thank you so much for inviting me, and welcome to everybody in the audience. And thank you so much for joining. Definitely welcome your questions and comments. And I know that Martin will be monitoring those that get submitted and happy to answer those at any time. So I am at my core a oncologist, so a cancer doctor, the cancer doctor who gives people chemotherapy. And really, I like to think of myself as more than that, and being honored to join patients and their families on their cancer journey. I started my career in academia up in Boston, and anybody who's in academia knows, did the traditional pathway of seeing patients, running our clinical trial division, doing NIH-funded research, and thought I had my career path set out for me. And when I came to trying to get continued grant funding, I realized that the research I wanted to do was much bigger than I could do just by myself. It was bigger than what I could do even within a academic institution that was well resourced. And it really, I wanted to have a impact at scale. And around that time, I reached out to Amy Abernathy, who was the CMO at Flatiron at the time, and said, Amy, I want to do what Flatiron's doing, but I can't move to New York because I was in Boston. And she said, well, why don't you commute? And 6 weeks later, I had joined Flatiron, and really the very best career decision I've ever made. At the time, a lot of my colleagues and mentors were like, are you sure you want to go to a startup? Because Flatiron was pre-acquisition then. And I said, I just want to have that impact at scale. I want to be able to work with the statisticians and the engineers and the ML folks to really try to make a difference with data. And really the best career decision, and have been able to make a greater impact on science than I ever could in academia. Shall I say a little bit about Flatiron itself for those who don't know? So Flatiron is a health tech company. There are essentially two parts of the business. The first is our HC business, or a healthcare business, and we have a bespoke oncology-focused electronic health record. And that is through de-identification processes and HIPAA and BAAs, the source of the data that we use for our data products. And on the research side, we spend a lot of time curating the data. Just going from an EHR to a data set can be a messy process. So we have our structured data that's curated, and then have a tech-enabled process for curating all the notes and all the unstructured data. So pathology reports, radiology reports, the things that the doctor wrote in their notes, and particularly important for cancer patients, what the doctor thinks about how their disease is doing. Has the patient responded and is doing well and we should continue therapy? Or has the patient progressed and therefore we need to change chemotherapy? And this is exactly what my patients are asking me when I'm sitting in the office with them, because I do still see patients. They want to know, Doc, how is this working? Can you tell me what's happening next? How am I going to do? Am I going to get to that holiday party I really want to go to? And I can answer those questions based on clinical trial data, but less than 10% of cancer patients actually enroll in a clinical trial. So your grandma or your wife don't actually have data for every single type of individual out there. And by scaling data at large, and part of that is using AI and ML type techniques, we can really understand how real people, how the rest of the world is doing with their cancer journeys. So then I can answer that question for your specific family member.
Yeah, one of the things, that I would like to address here is, the platform technology that exists in Flatiron. It's just the beginning, of a long, long pathway to solving real world problems. So you touched on one area, which is in oncology in particular, there is a bit of trial and error. How is the patient responding? How is the patient feeling? What is the impact of the medication? And with an ability to understand in greater details using programs like AI and machine learning, we are able to personalize medicine and make it more towards precision medicine. And this ability to really understand an individual is exciting to me, because at the end of the day, as physicians, we want to understand what the patient needs are. We want to understand their problems. And it's not about statistics. And so, one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is the incredible power of a company that is able to pull together large pieces of data, synthesize that, and come up with new ways of looking at healthcare individually. And one of the exciting things in this process is to be able to identify some of the failures and some of the solutions within the system of discovering drugs, developing drugs, analyzing drugs through clinical trials, and the strengths and weaknesses that are currently in the system reflect a large unmet need for historically underserved patients. And the FDA, over the past 8 years, has recognized that there is a statistical significantly important missing gap in clinical trial data, that this gap represents a disparity between the representation of certain cohorts in the population in the US at large and the results that we're getting from the clinical trials, which are skewed. And so, as a physician, we want to give the right medication to the right patient. We want to make sure that what we're doing for the patient is effective. And so now we have a way of monitoring patients, which is a traditional combination of physical examination, history, diagnostic tests. But I believe that this exciting new book is being written using advanced technologies to be able to fine tune that so that we can now get better data, more accurate data, which breaks the treatment algorithms into much more personalized and precise data bits, and allows us to do things like repurpose drugs or to cross drugs with other drugs, not in a way that is kind of trial and error or best guess using our scientific knowledge, but with proven scientific analysis using machine learning. And I think that this speaks to one important issue, which is who has access to this, you know, and how can we identify those cohorts who don't have access to this?
I'm so glad you brought this up, Martin, and something I feel quite passionately about in terms of health equity. And I actually wanted to level set that I believe that health equity and how both individuals and companies and the population at large addresses this is really a learning journey. And I will be the first to admit I'm just beginning on my learning journey about health equity. And I want to call out all the people who've come before me, who have built the science and the data around health equity that allows companies like Flatiron to really help move things forward from here. And to that spirit, I do want to acknowledge that I'm presenting on the traditional lands of the Chadot and Yuchi tribes here in Florida, and wanted to again acknowledge those that have come before us. So when you talk about health equity, I think the key part when we're also talking about AI is the challenges that AI has when it is trained on data sets that do not include all the people who will be, the algorithms will be applied to in terms of their predictive powers. And I think that at the very basis is why I think it's really important to have data equity, which is a slightly different concept than health equity. And it really means that the data that underlies both our clinical trials and, more importantly, our real-world data sets has the same level of completeness and quality for all populations. And if we can get that right, then regardless of what the question is being posed on the data or to the AI algorithm, we will know that at least we are minimizing that chance of bias because of the data that it's trained on. So if we can get things right up on the upstream end, we'll have less adjustments that are needed on the downstream end. And I'll give you an example. We know that the type of data that comes from oncology clinics that are under-resourced for whatever reason, whether they're in a poor area or a rural area, that there might be more missingness, not because of the quality of care, but just because maybe the computers aren't always up. And so therefore it's harder to enter the data. And so being able to equalize that at the upstream part is really critical to having the appropriate algorithms downstream.
I couldn't agree with you more. And this is where I see Flatiron as a platform, for incredible things. So I want to pause here for two things. One is we do have an exciting overview video about Flatiron, which is short and I think will punctuate some of this, beginning conversation. And second, I really want to again circle back to the people that have logged in. Quite a number of people from all over the country. Nikhil from Canada, Lucas from Germany, Jenny from New York, Robert from Poland, so many people, Michael from Philadelphia, Joe, thank you for calling in from Cambridge Technologies. I can't emphasize enough that the power of this webinar really is in the dissemination from person to person. And the ripple effect is what we're looking for in terms of really impacting people's thinking, opening up doors for conversation about what are the possibilities that science, technology, and innovation can do to improve your life, other people's lives, and healthcare in general. So let me switch over to this incredibly interesting video that Dr. Miksad has given us, and I'm going to switch our viewing screen for a moment.
Thank you, Martin. And I think the answer really there is that we can. And apropos the topic for today, the machine learning actually, I think, can be very helpful all along that data curation process, as well as giving out a new evidence faster and at larger scale. So going back to the question around missing data, so the computer system is down at a clinic where maybe the electricity isn't as consistent, but the doc is still a good doc and writes the information down in their note, not in the structured data in the computer. So how do we find that? How do we turn something that's missing because of a systems issue, like the computer system, and actually be able to fill it in? And that's where we can really leverage machine learning to extract the data, to extract it at a scale and a speed that we wouldn't be able to do if we were hand reviewing every single chart to find a specific piece of information. And this is particularly critical within oncology, where those decisions really have life or death consequences for patients. And we want to be able to represent all patients, no matter what systems issues affect how their care is documented.
Yeah, it's just so exciting to talk with you. Your vision of what the possibilities are is yet to really explode and be tapped. And you as a physician, part of what we're looking at is a sea change. Part of what we're looking at is an ability to bring new possibilities. Let's just highlight one thing, which is not directly related to healthcare in terms of the subjects that we're talking about historically underserved populations. But let's talk about an incredible company called InSilico, which has used a new platform technology in AI and machine learning to not only bring a new drug to the market, but they actually use that technology to identify a drug target, to validate that target, bring that drug all the way through clinical trials, and then commercialize it in 30 months. So once again, the possibilities of creating something using innovation and technology over the past 20 years were quite exciting, in large part because innovation was new over the past 40 years for us, and innovation was the shiny object. And we figured out use cases from that innovation shiny object. But now we have real human needs at a healthcare level, which has been highlighted by the tragedies of COVID. And we are now taking a different position that the CEOs of companies can not only be about creating disruptive innovation, using a business model, which I completely disagree with, which is zero-sum gain, using the notion that we don't want to compete, we just want to dominate. It's completely different now in healthcare. And I think Flatiron represents that. We haven't really touched on that. I know you're a very modest person, and you're also modest about the accomplishments that Flatiron, has achieved and is looking to bring to patients. But I really want to begin this, conversation as a wave, really, of possibilities, because what I see is change in leadership, change in mission, change in goals, and change in behavior, which says companies now want to collaborate. Large pharmaceutical companies are, for the first time, generating incredible collaborations outside their own industry, like Sanofi is partnering with Generali and Orange and Capgemini to build an accelerator that has now put $1.2 billion into 80 early stage companies in digital health. This has never been done before. And I think, that you are at the hub of all this, because companies are going to be looking to you to bring new ideas, to validate their own ideas, and to amplify ideas. So
thank you so much for
in advance, I want to thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing up the collaboration aspect, because that is very important to me personally and to Flatiron, because it is so important to bring a rigorous and thoughtful scientific approach while also making sure that we're meeting the needs of both our clients as well as patients around the world. And I wanted to use as an example the reference you made to the FDA earlier in this conversation in terms of their increasing interest in inclusive trials for all patients, and including oncology. One of the things that really came out over the past year is a commitment by the FDA to a diversity plan, which requires that all companies who are registering pivotal trials to be able to demonstrate what their plan is for diversity. A lot of this is still being worked out. The FDA's template is due out by the end of the year. And very important is that they became legislatively backed at the end of last year. So a lot of people are looking around and trying to develop the best diversity plans. And the best diversity plans are going to need good data to even know which populations are where we should focus our time and attention, and then be able to hold those discussions and then be able to make the plans to be able to be more inclusive in our trials. And there's a number of different ways that can be done, whether it's from site selection or how you resource patient engagement, or even efforts to have specific data collection from specific populations who may be more affected by the disease than people who are typically enrolled in clinical trials. And for example, this would be in multiple myeloma. There's under representation of Black patients, although they are more likely to have multiple myeloma and also more likely to have consequences for it. And so what Flatiron is doing is collaborating with our clients and other people across the industry to develop a suite of solutions to try to help companies meet both the ambition from an ethical point of view, as well as the ambition from a business point of view and regulatory point of view.
Yeah, no, it's exciting that the government is recognizing that if they chime in, there will be a catalyst within industry. It's a bit slow moving, but then that's what government is. They're kind of big picture oriented. They're more of the tortoise than the hare. But I think the directionality is what you're talking about, which is critical. And I think that for me, these pieces of the puzzle fit together. So if your goal is to increase the effectiveness of what you're doing, you need to understand, as healthcare providers, as scientists, as industry leaders, that medicine is not a one size fits all. And we've now learned very clearly that patients with different ethnic backgrounds, different genders, different social determinants of health all interact with the healthcare system differently and actually respond to medications differently. And so this recognition is really not really represented enough in the media. Part of the webinar focus is to identify where the puck is going. As Wayne Gretzky said, you can be a good hockey player if you skate well with the puck in front of you. You can be a great hockey player if you skate to where the puck is going. I think Flatiron is skating to where the puck is going. I think that the healthcare system is moving more and more towards real precision medicine, really understanding the individual's genetic makeup. I am incredibly fortunate to work at Endeavor with some amazing entrepreneurs who are looking at developing gene therapies for rare diseases. There's an incredible company that is up and coming that has yet to really fully disclose itself here in New York, which has at its base a tremendous geneticist, tremendous vision to attack the intersection of AI, big data, and gene therapy. And when they become public, it will be my great pleasure to announce them and introduce you to them, because I think that what we're trying to do at Endeavor is to create the fuel for engines like yours. So we are trying to find amazing companies that can use your services and other incredible technologies that are out there. That speaks to collaboration. So when we bring amazing genetic information to Flatiron that talks about a rare blood disease or a rare cancer, you have the ability then to take that to the next level and to be able to harness that and find some real world changes in treatment algorithms. And that's super exciting because it's a very complex problem that we have that requires collaborative thinking at the same table. I don't know how you think about that picture, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you. I love the analogy of skating to where the puck is. And one of the prouder aspects I have in being at Flatiron is that we've been building the bench in health equity for the past year to be ready for when, as you mentioned, the catalyst from the FDA came to life, such that we have the bench and expertise and including AI expertise around issues for social determinants of health and other factors which go beyond race and ethnicity for patients who are historically marginalized and for whom drugs may have different impact or side effects, such as the elderly patients that you mentioned. And I really think having this bench of experts really helps us help our clients meet the unmet needs and that we're prepared and committed to solve with them.
Yeah, and I want to, add to another layer on top of everything you said, which I agree with, which is that, part of moving the needle is the business side. Part of moving the needle is understanding where the funding and liquidity comes from. And, I do wear a few different hats. I was a former FDA attorney. I am a healthcare economist. I am an investor. And, as part of this compilation, our research and endeavor has shown that 10x the liquidity is going into digital health compared to other sectors. What does this mean? It means great opportunity for people who care about doing good. And that really goes to the heart of the title, of this particular webinar. Many people have criticized AI, very prominent people have criticized AI, for something that may be out of control in a few years. But I look at AI and the things that you're doing and machine learning and deep learning, which are the next levels, which we haven't fully explored yet, as tremendous opportunities to allow people like yourself with good hearts, good intention, great minds to come together for a noble purpose. And so when I look at the geneticist who I'm working with, whose goal is to address 10,000 unsolved rare genetic diseases in his lifetime. I mean, that's a big, hairy, audacious goal that's equivalent to Elon Musk. And it may not necessarily be that 10,000, rare diseases, are cured, but the goal and just thinking about it means that collaborative efforts are exciting. There's an energy to problem solving. We have the capabilities now in incredible advances like from Bluebird Bio, finding a absolute cure for an uncurable disease. We have companies like CSL. We have other companies that are in the chase now to solve unsolvable problems. And that's where I see Flatiron coming in, being able, to let this flower bloom. We're in the bud stage right now. We're not even sure where it can all lead to. So I am not in the camp that thinks there's a danger in AI that is going to take over the world. I'm not a Terminator, person. I do think that the quality of data has to be monitored, which is maybe one thing that we should speak about, which does fall into this healthcare disparities issue, because the quality of the data in clinical trials is not where it should be. It doesn't represent complete population data points. So it is something that I would love to explore with you. How does Flatiron look at the input side of data?
That's a really important question and goes back to my first comments around data equity, that we have to have the data there in order to make the right decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps I'm a little more sanguine than you in terms of the limitations of AI. And I do think there's many people who are truly passionate and well-intentioned And I think we have to provide ourselves with those safeguards such that our good intentions yield what we are hoping them to be. So, for example, including patients in discussions around AI, including historically marginalized populations and discussions around how to increase representation within clinical trials. And I think those are really important conversations and safeguards so that we don't have things end up where we didn't intend them to be. And Martin, I know you like my story of there was a company. It was a very small startup. It was maybe about 50 people or so. They will remain unnamed, but they came to ask me for some advice, and they went through who was on their board and who was in their company, and they had all the best, like ML people, all the best quantitative scientists, all the best business people. But the gap was there no CMO. And my question I posed back to the founders, who were fabulous and did well with the company, was who's taking care of the heart of the patient? Of course, you need a business-minded doc in there, but who's actually helping set that guiding light such that when there's decisions to be made, that if you take it from the perspective of the patient, I think you always will make the right decision, even if it's a hard decision. So I think really representation does matter on the teams that are working towards the mission of improving healthcare for all.
Yeah. And I also want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the things that Flatiron is doing. I know we have a few slides to represent some of this work and wanted to give you that opportunity now. I don't want to break the flow of this tremendous conversation, but if you'd like to talk about those, we can put those up.
I think we don't have to go to the slides. The most important piece in my mind about what Flatiron is doing is the diversity planning and leveraging the technology that we do have, both at the data curation and evidence generation side and at the point of care, through our ability to span the entire continuum from clinician and patient facing to large data set generation and evidence making. I'll give the audience a few examples that I'm proud of. We have one asset that helps clinicians actually make decisions and document their decisions around treatment choices. And there's our own internal data has shown that when the physicians use this tool, which we call Flatiron Assist, they actually have an increase in the concordance with national guidelines. So why is that important? That's important because it helps ensure that patients, despite any systemic issues that might be impacting their care, are still receiving the standards that are set by the national guideline committees. I always do caution people that I don't ever want 100% concordance with national guidelines, because we still have that art of cancer care. And that art will be that sometimes the national guidelines actually don't fit the situation. 90% of the time they do, and we need to retain that art of medicine in order to figure out the times where it doesn't. So to all the docs out there who are worried about AI replacing us, I don't think they can. Maybe they can help us with that majority of cases that do follow the main guidelines and main situations, but being able to identify when it doesn't, I think is really critical. And then this ties back to the health equity piece, because if I don't have data around all the different types of populations that are suffering or going through a disease, then I'm going to have less awareness about when the individual in front of me fits the national guidelines or needs to be considered separately as part of the art of medicine about what's best for their individual case.
No, I completely agree. You know, The lessons learned, from letting the internet kind of just go wild without regulations, cannot be ignored. And so it is absolutely, we're completely on the same page, which is, to make sure that the parameters on the use of AI is done um, in the most productive and um, organized way. That a few bad actors can spoil the show for the majority. I am the eternal optimist. I lead the charge for young entrepreneurs who have blinders on and only see the mountain to climb and think they'll put their Nikes on and climb it in a day. So my enthusiasm is tempered by my life experiences, my scars, and my gray hairs to know that in order for this to happen, there has to be an oversight committee to make sure that the quality control all along the aspects of healthcare are maintained at rigorous levels. And that's one of the reasons that I look at your company and others in the area that are doing exciting things as a hub. The larger you become, the more important companies who are using data become, the more confidence I will have that we can bring exciting companies to you for use cases that are effective changes in outcomes. And for me, that's what it's all about, is the intersection of amazing entrepreneurs who can conquer anything that they see in front of them, at least in their minds, for Endeavor to provide some, gray-haired framework for helping build that, and then most importantly, bringing in, seasoned people who have constructive points of view which are synergistic, and that synergistic can at times slow the process down, but can control the quality of it. It can also speed it up if there's a catalyst of ideas. So to me, the beauty of the world that we're living in now is that we have tools that we've never had before. And one of the areas that personally I am very excited about and Endeavor is looking into is the area of health and wellness, because this is really the next level, X number of decades down the road, that hopefully will become more and more mainstream. As we look at Endeavor in our research team about trends, we like to support the altruistic trends that are moving healthcare from hospital based and doctor office based to home based. Part of that personalization and empowerment is what's exciting. The ability to bring some of these technologies to people is exciting, but making sure that there is a central hub to validate, to verify, to make sure that the results are reproducible, that they're not, one-off events. That's what's missing from the internet. And that's what I see as critically important in healthcare.
You're talking to the scientist in me. So in my research unit head role, that is one of the things we're really thinking hard about, is how to peel back that black box reputation that AI has. So we've published in peer-reviewed journals around how our recommendations are for validating ML in terms of different types of frameworks that are needed when you're bringing these types of tools into the healthcare setting. And we've also published a lot of research around both individual tools, or such as the increasing completeness of an important score in oncology, which is the ECOG score, performance score, if you're in the field, and how we can use ML to extract that information. And we've also published a lot on how we define progression within the medical record. as a doc in the clinic with my patient in front of me, I know it when I see it, but how can we pull that information out of thousands and hundreds of thousands of charts and have that as a rigorous, high quality, reproducible, consistent outcome,
Right.
such that then we can make confident decisions based on the evidence that is produced by it. And that is one of the strong commitments of Flatiron, is to have that transparency around our research. Yep. And to publish in peer-reviewed journals such that people can look at it and have the confidence and understand what we're doing and how we're doing it.
I can't think of a better way to finish off this conversation on such an incredibly, long-term vision. So for me, I probably see 35 plus companies a week. More and more of those companies are AI driven. But just as in the .com era, which a lot of people don't necessarily have fresh recollections of, anything that had a .com next to it was a rocket ship. Now, my job as a physician is to do good, to use AI to do good. It's very important that behind the scenes is visible to everyone. And one of the things that I am personally proud of is the workshops that we do with companies, small companies and large companies like yours, to bring them together to say, pull the curtain back. What's the good news? What's the bad news? If you can't come as a CEO and as a leader and say, we have problems, in my opinion, that's not part of the ethos that you and I believe in, because it reflects a concern that your innovation is going to be stolen. Your innovation is not going to be stolen. Your innovation can be amplified if you identify good people to work with in a collaborative environment. And I'm not saying be naive and just walk in without contractual protections, but I am saying it's about people, good people, caring people, authentic people like yourself, who are mission driven like Flatiron. And so what I'm excited about, and I kind of feel like I'm 25 again, is the notion to identify these young companies who are a bit naive, but that's fine. And also to identify those companies that are authentic and are willing to pull the curtain back and show people their warts and show people their problems, because we can come together if we have a collaborative effort with great collaboration partners to solve the problems. One of the things that I've been talking about in panel discussions is a new notion of company valuation. People came to me recently in a conference in California and they said, Dr. Gershon, how do you value companies? We look at comparables. We look at what happened in 2000, 2001, 2002, and we see what do they have? What are they worth? And I'm like, no, that's all essentially out the window. What brings value to companies are the leadership, the mindset, and the ability to amplify what they have in collaboration partnerships. Because the way to solve problems is to commercialize products. And if you want to commercialize products, you can't do that by yourself as a small company anymore. So it's a true honor to be able to speak to investors and entrepreneurs and great leaders and physicians like yourself, because I do think that there is a pivot, that there is a change, that people are realizing that valuations of your company will improve if you have great partners who can help solve problems like Flatiron. So I don't know what your experience is. I know you work with the largest companies in the world, so this is not necessarily front and center, for you, but I'm just absolutely delighted to have this dynamic conversation, which is a continuation of many conversations that we've had with the same energy and the same, I think, mission-driven, patient-centric focus. So thank you so much for contributing here.
Thank you so much, Martin. And I also want to leave with a similar sentiment that mission-driven, open and truthful discussions and companies, I think, are where we can make the best long-term impact and really be able to leave a legacy of doing good.
Absolutely. I want to take this moment to thank everyone who signed in. We have people from all over the world making comments. It's been an incredibly dynamic conversation, which have touched on so many important points. I would love to have you back sooner rather than later to continue this conversation. I would love to be able to harvest some of the questions that I see in the chat and send them over to you.
Definitely.
For now, I want to thank you once again, and I want to thank the audience for all of their contribution and thoughtful comments. I also want to please let everyone know that in the coming weeks, we're going to have more exciting conversations with incredible leaders in the AI space. There's also some incredible conferences that are coming up that are going to be addressing many of the issues that we talked about here, and we'll be announcing some of those in the next week. So if there's any last comments, the floor is yours. If not, we will sign off for the day and let people enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Great. Thank you, Martin. This has been an absolute pleasure. And please reach out if you have any questions that I can be helpful with or Flatiron can be helpful with. And we look forward together to making a real change in the world.
Fantastic. Stay on the line for a minute. Rebecca, I'm going to end the broadcast now. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.